What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Filip Latocha, and in this video we're going to recap my 2021 running race year overall and kind of just really break it down and just tell you what went right, what went wrong, what lessons I'm going to take into 2022, and some ideas for you perhaps to take on into your training programs and whatnot. So before we get into it, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're already subscribed and you're already watching the content. Thanks so much. Love you guys a lot. Without further ado, let's start breaking it down. So, for those who've been following the YouTube channel from 2020 to about 2021, beginning of that year, I would say, there wasn't a whole lot of direction to the channel, just kind of like getting through all, the pandemic stuff because of the lockdowns, and like the channel was originally for kind of breaking in the Tokyo Marathon and stuff, and obviously that all just kind of went sideways after that. So, what happened at this point now is it's the start of 2021. I actually start my year off how I've been starting off the last 15 years of my life, which was in Minnesota for a ski trip. And usually around this time, we start kind of going back home and whatnot. And this time around, I'm running a lot more outside in the snowy conditions with the Pegasus Turbo Shield that I have available to me because I have a shoe that's winterproof, weatherproof, and I'm just still training as we're going along. I don't have any races that are set on my calendar because, nothing is finite at this point in time. Like, my gym is still closed, so I'm just learning how to embrace the suck of basically running outside when it's cold as balls outside. So that's kind of the case for the entirety of January into like mid-February. And at some point I remember running when it was like minus 10 degrees outside, and like, knowing me, like, I'm gonna have to do it if there's no gym or treadmill available to me. I'm like, man, this just sucks. Like, I need to get out of this state ASAP. And around this time, I guess it was brought up to me by my dad, who was kind of encouraging this idea of like the workcation kind of vibe, where I'm working remote for X amount of months already, and I can literally work from anywhere for as long as I want. And I am being monitored here and there, but like, the idea is just get your tasks done, just work whenever it's most convenient for you, etc. And Florida came up on the radar because A, it's pretty cheap. Two, it was just freedom everywhere. Like, you want to go because you can go to a restaurant, you can go to a gym, you can do all these sorts of things, and you won't have any issues with it. So that was when March of this year kind of kicked in, and that was when the Sarasota series began on this channel, which, again, lots of running still going on. I'm still kind of biking with my stationary whenever it's available. But at this point in time, it's the first time I'm realizing, like, hey, wait a minute, I could sign up for races when I'm out in Florida. And that's exactly what I did. I signed up for about 3 of them, like a few weeks beforehand. And like, going to Florida, I had no intention of racing whatsoever. I just wanted to chill, just have a good time, just kind of explore the state. And now I've got races on my schedule. I'm like, well, I spent this entire year not racing, more or less just training, getting like a really nice peak fitness. Like, we may as well try to like kind of put something out there and see what happens. And to be completely honest, I'm in actually a much better fitness than that I am currently at this very moment. I digress. And, I sign up for, I think the first week we're there, I do my first race, which was the Graybeard Half Marathon and 4-mile race. I opt in for the 4-mile race because my distance legs aren't quite developed at this point in time. Just my quick twitch legs are. So I obviously race that 4-miler, and I win my first race ever from an overall standpoint. So that was very huge for me. It was good for my morale. And then a week after that, while we were in Florida, I raced another race. I think it was called the Lucky Leprechaun 10K. So I'm running the 10K field. I take second place in that race. But unfortunately, because of some of the terrain and how the course is kind of laid out, I do end up really hurting my peroneal tendon, which is going to become a very big part of this story as we continue on. And yeah, second place is second place. I'm not going to be mad about it, but for all intents and purposes, I think if the course was laid out a little bit better, you know what? No, I don't think I would have made first place. The guy who won the race was really good, and he, like, again, wasn't from Florida either, so it was just really funny. And then obviously, because of this peroneal tendon injury that I had, I couldn't really run or race as much anymore, so I couldn't do my third race out there. And there was a lot of gym workouts because we did find a local gym, no restrictions whatsoever. And it was just really awesome. Like, I was basically weightlifting almost every single day with my brother whenever it was available. and it was fun. I just, finally got to enjoy weightlifting once more, and I put on a little bit of muscle, which was fine. I definitely got a lot of sun because it's Florida, and yeah, it was just really good overall, I thought. So we come back from Florida, now we're in Chicago, and I've got like this newfound kind of inspiration because we were out there for a whole month, and it's starting to warm up in Chicago again, and races are starting to come back again as well. So I start picking and choosing some races for the year to get into, tentatively speaking, depending on, lockdowns and all this other kind of stuff. But my fitness starts drastically improving because now I'm able to go outside for longer runs. I'm not able to go outside for much longer. I can do 2-a-day runs especially. So the peak is now starting to increase a little bit up until I think the entire April and May. I don't think there were any setbacks. I was just making some great progress as we were going along. And that kind of sets me up for my first 5K race in a long time in basically June of 2021, which was the River Grove FOP 5K race, which I've done 2 times before in the past. And, I took 6th place both times. And this was the year that I basically won the race. It wasn't a magical time. I think it was like 18 minutes and a few seconds, maybe. If the distance was better calculated, I think I would have actually finished in like 17:45. My goal was obviously sub 16, but at halfway through the race, I realized it was really hot, and I could just take a tempo pace at this race because 2nd and 3rd place were just so far behind. I'm like, I'm just gonna relax and just race tactically and just win this thing. So that's basically what happened with that particular race. And let me see, is there anything in the chart there? No, I guess after June, it's kind of July is kind of rolling in. This is when the Chicago Marathon deferral kind of sets in for me, and now I am actually going to start racing or starting to prep my marathon distance training for, the Chicago Marathon. And I guess also my gym is open at about this time, so I'm just, again, mixing bike workouts. I'm starting to swim a little bit more because I am actually signed up for the Chicago Triathlon as well. And yeah, it's just really coming down to this, but at the same time, there's a lot of monotony for just doing all this stuff during, in the summer of like July in the city. So that August, I actually, with my family, we do plan a month-long trip to Silverthorne, Colorado, which is the altitude training camp, as I call it in my vlog. And yeah, basically I was out there for an entire month. My family was kind of in and out depending on their work schedules, but yeah, it was also a very good experience, and I will break it down as to why. So basically Chicago is about 800 feet elevation, but Silverthorne is now 8,500 to about 9,000 feet elevation, so that's a lot. That's almost 10 times, the elevation. And my mindset at this time is, okay, if I'm swimming, biking, and running up here, and I'm keeping consistent, there's no way that my Chicago Triathlon progress is going to go bad. And at the same time, if I don't get injured, it's going to be a really good time, and I think I'll, produce some really good results while I'm out there. So, of course, the first couple of weeks that I'm there, it's very nice, it's very easy. I'm getting used to, like, the gym that we always go to out there. I start swimming out there. And, like, swimming at 9,000 feet was just really fun. I think I've mentioned that a couple of times. And, like, of course, my buddy Zach is out there, too. So, swimming with him was also a good challenge for me. It was a good inspirational kind of moment also in the water. Biking is also good because you can always go outside. And it's always a lot of mountains that I can bike. So, it doesn't need to be necessarily, like, this kind of, like, streamlined speed work. It could just be a lot of work to build some sort of, like, climbing endurance, which is good, I guess, for the lungs and for the heart, but it's not necessarily required for like the Chicago Triathlon, which is mostly a flat course with like some climbs, but nothing like major. I digress. And the running as I go and like continue on is what I'm realizing is that like my sleep schedule is not great. It's just like I'm getting more and more tired as I'm out there because of the elevation is just really hard to recover from, and I'm like continuing like the same style of distance as I'm going. So like if I'm running 5 to 6 miles a day, or like some days I'm doing 7 to 8, or I'm gonna do like a trail run one day, like it's all getting worse and I'm not healing nearly as quickly as I want to. And that would just really put a damper to my whole like mindset of improving while I was out there. But the proof is more in the pudding later, as we'll get into the Chicago Triathlon discussion. But like, you're not going to see those results almost instantaneously, other than the fact that you're running out there in elevation and you're like, hey, I'm not dead, and I can kind of do this on a daily basis, but I feel like garbage after a while. So, by the time that training camp is over, I'm back in Chicago for about 2-3 days beforehand, and one of my buddies is talking to me about doing the super sprint for the Chicago Triathlon, which is the day before the actual Olympic distance. So of course I sign up, and it's just kind of my first break-in with like the wetsuit in a little bit, you know, on the bike and on the run. And I think I have that video somewhere else where I kind of document that process or that weekend recap. But basically, I win my age group for that race, which was pretty sick. And like, I didn't feel like I was winded or anything whatsoever afterwards. Like, I just felt great. And like, yeah, that was just, it gave me high morale as it was going into basically the Olympic distance, which was the next day. And like, I didn't really sleep all that much that night. But again, the Olympic distance, I PR'd the distance. Overall, just the only issues now was like my swim was way better than it was in the years past. My run was better than it was in years past, but my bike pretty much suffered in this case. So that's kind of where, you know, some things kind of needed to be improved or will need improvement as I go into this triathlon season in 2022. And I'll discuss the plan for that as we, again, go along with it. So something interesting for me to, of course, kind of just keep in the back burner. But now that the Chicago Triathlon season is over, this is kind of like the end of the summer break into like the school season time in my brain, because it's like the end of August going into September. So at this point in time, I'm thinking, okay, we're back in the Chicago Marathon training block. There are currently no restrictions, or the race is not going to get canceled. We're going to do this. So, you know, I'm just training. I'm putting on these long runs every so often. And this is kind of one of the cruxes in my training program is I'm really not dedicated in my long runs to getting them done. I would much rather just be consistent about getting like 8 to 10 mile runs done than do like maybe an 8 here, or 6 there, a 5 there, and then like a 15 or a 17 or a 19 as it goes along. For some reason, like I always felt like I was time constrained, or like there was a time constraint in that fashion, but I don't think that was the case. I think I was just like awfully lazy, and I was expecting like I could accomplish more than I actually thought I could. And as we discussed in the Chicago Marathon piece right now, you'll kind of see that my fitness does drastically improve at this point in time, because again, I am running a lot more, I'm biking a little bit less, I am weight training a little bit more to like, you know, relieve some soreness and some residual things from marathon training and whatnot. And my peroneal tendon starts flaring up again from some natural stuff. And then like I took some misstep when I was walking this one night with some of my friends, and I do distinctly remember that playing a role, because it was like a week or like a few days before the Chicago Marathon, and I remember taping it up and just like, you know, it wasn't that great. So now we're in obviously this Chicago Marathon weekend. It's race day, and I take off on the race, and I think I've already discussed this in great detail, but like I started really hot during the race, and by about mile 14, 15, I think primarily mile 16 was when I knew the race was over, and it just turned into a run, walk, run, walk. My peroneal tendon was okay, funny enough. I was just completely exhausted. I was dehydrated. I was sweating. It was a really hot day for the Chicago Marathon, and I know a lot of people didn't do well, but there were very few who like overcame the odds of the Chicago Marathon conditions and really did well. And I like to look at it from the extreme ownership standpoint of I should have just been better prepared for that weather condition realistically. So after the Chicago Marathon, my brain is now focused on the fall to winter season that's kind of coming up, which historically has always happened, minus the year 2020. So that's like the hot chocolate in Chicago, the Polish Independence Day race, some turkey trots. And that's where my brain is now. So I'm thinking, okay, after Chicago Marathon, let's get into it. Let's start training for those particular races and just see what happens. But the only caveat is that when I did this in 2019, I wasn't necessarily injured. But this time around, I'm definitely injured, and I'm not really keeping it into mind. Like, I know my peroneal tendon is like in a bad spot, and it's just getting progressively worse and worse as I'm running with it. And eventually, I had a treadmill workout that essentially I could not finish because of how much pain I was experiencing in that area. And that was when, a couple of days later, when it wasn't healing, that's when I had my official stress fracture diagnosis. So at this point, like, the video should be over because my race season is pretty much over, but there is some hope, of course. One of those things, obviously, is that I'm very hard to break, in the sense that if I have an injury, I'm going to be at the gym twice daily, starting to recover and all that madness. So I'm in there, just rehabbing the ankle as much as possible to get this bone, as much blood flow as I can, just to get out of that 4 to 6 week window to start racing again. Granted, I take the hot chocolate race I was supposed to do, and I defer that to Houston of 2022 now. The Polish Independence Day race that I wanted to do, I had to just, opt out of. I couldn't get a refund or anything. So that kind of sucked, realistically speaking, but it is what it is. And then I did manage to compete at the North Shore Turkey Trot, but I ran it a little bit more casually than normal, despite the fact that I still had some peroneal, fibula strain and pain and like residual damage there still. But I was about 5 to 6 weeks recovered, but I just didn't have the speed and I was still a little bit in pain, but I managed to get through that race overall. So that's kind of what happened on that front when it came to the final race of my 2021 season. And I've more or less spent the entire December making a lot of big moves in my life while I was just kind of gradually getting back to the speed of running and whatnot. So obviously one of those things was I finally got hired full-time for the company that I work for, and now here I am, like living also in my new place, nice and far away from the city, which has its perks and also has its downsides when it comes to training. But I guess we'll discuss that more as we go along. But as I start the 2022 year, what is definitely known is this, that I have plenty of races that I can still train for. At the filming of this video, I don't have a marathon set in stone that I'm going to do this year. And yeah, basically the next major race for me is in the next 2.5 weeks in Houston, which is the hot chocolate race that I effectively deferred back in 2021. So that's kind of where the 2021 year was for me. So if I can define it in any sort of way, it has its ups and downs. But realistically, I had a Baja Blast of a 2021, and I would not change a thing. Everything that I've done this year, or last year in this case, was a learning lesson. It was good for me, and I enjoyed it overall. And I would definitely do it again, but much better and with more knowledge than I had the year before. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And definitely subscribe to the channel if you want some more content like this, or you want to see some cool progress as we're going along from this point on. But yeah, 2022 is going to be full of really cool stuff as I start organizing it and getting, in the swing of things in my local new area. And it's going to be great. So thanks again for watching this video. I'll see you guys in the next one.